Good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Hall. I'm a student in the PM 690. This is our week one discussion. My apologies for the late jump. I got a little behind on the materials. So let's jump into it. So we have 5 topics we're going to go over. First being the difference between strategic planning and strategic management. A second, the top reasons why strategic plans fail to be operational. Primary components of strategic management process, responsibilities and duties of a strategic manager, and why companies need strategic planning. Okay, so let's roll this out. So strategic planning. I'm going to do bullets here. I'm going to make this kind of quick. This is all kind of new for all of us, so hopefully I get some good feedback. So strategic planning focuses, its main reason is focus, process, and outcome. The focus is it concentrates on the future and outlines the long-term goals. Process involves allocating resources, achieving objectives. Outcome usually is the roadmap. In the time period, sometimes can be 1 to 2 years, can go from like 5 to 10 years. Strategic management, its focus, process, and outcome is the focus is it encompasses both planning and execution. The process involves implementation, evaluation, and adjusting strategies along the way that can help with the day-to-day stuff. And outcome is that the guide to the organization towards achieving, your mission, your goals, the vision. So the biggest difference between strategic planning and strategic management is it's almost in the word. So planning is writing out what you're wanting to do over a long period of time, and the management is the actual operation steps that you would take to implement the planning process. So the top reason for why strategic plans fail to be operational. I start off, we've all been around poor leadership. If someone is real rigid, or the plans are rigid, not a person, but the plans are rigid, when there isn't a lot of resources, when people can't be honest, when there's issues with people being accountable, and when you're writing out these plans, they have to be clear, they have to be concise, and these goals have to be there can't be a lot of gray area. But I lean on poor management. It's typically the biggest issue. So primary components of the strategic management process. So there's several steps here, and you can look at it several ways. And I'm starting to see like a pattern of what a lot of people posted. So I'm trying to make it a little bit different, and I'm probably the last one posting here. So there is the initial of analyzing. You got to look at the market. You got to look at competitors. You got to look at, you got to look at yourself, the internal side of it. What you guys are doing good and what you're not. Putting the strategy together. Getting some type of synergy between the vision, the mission, the goals, and developing that competitive plan. And then you got to put it in place, which you got to figure out what makes people move. You got to figure out what motivates people. You got to have controls in there to make sure that you can kind of consistently evaluate what's going on. And when you're doing these controls and you're evaluating, you got to be able to measure the effectiveness of what your strategy is. So there has to be some type of metrics in place. So it's got to be measurable. The responsibilities and duties of a strategic manager. There's a lot, right? So you got to form it, you got to implement it, you got to evaluate it. You constantly have to communicate what's going on, and of course you got to manage when there has to be adjustments made. So there's a lot there in the responsibilities. I could go on for 10 minutes there. And lastly is why companies need strategic planning. Do you want to keep the doors open, right? Do you want the company to be successful? So strategic planning is everything. It can give the company an advantage against your competitors. It helps you run a company efficiently with utilizing your capital, whether it's human capital or financial capital. With planning, it also improves choices made in directions. And sometimes, not always, but you can look ahead of where the company's going or what it's doing and kind of make adjustments that's needed prior to when it's needed, if that makes any sense. You can kind of look ahead and say, hey, and during this season or during this quarter or when we hit the market with something new, we got to kind of pivot there. And lastly it's the map. It gives a company, it gives a team a path. It gives them a road to travel down. And without strategic planning, a company's doomed to fail, regardless of how much capital they have. And you see it a lot with startups. If you're in the business or if you work with smaller companies, you ask them about the future and it's just like, the cold stare because they haven't looked ahead that far. So yeah, it gives strategic plans everything. It gives the team, it gives the entire culture or the community within that business direction where it's going. It can help manage tough times and allow the company to pivot when there is struggles, and it will definitely help financing the future. So that's it for me. Again, this is Joshua Hall with sorry, I keep drawing a blank on the course name. Everything's kind of new. With PM 690. I'm excited about this semester, and I really kind of like this here because it makes everyone kind of get personal. So I'll be posting this shortly, and I hope to hear some feedback. I know it's kind of late, and I'd be open to if you guys feedback even next week on this week's submission. Thanks, and have a good night.